All right. Let's see. Okay, so welcome. I'm Dr. Yasapa from Zion Law School. Okay, so let's get started. Let's continue with our course textbook. So we're doing, this is our textbook for this class. This is the free astrotheology class. The title of the book is The Gospel and the Zodiac, The Secret Truth About JC, the Christ Figure. The author is Bill Darrell-El. There's a link to the PDF, to a free PDF in the description area of this video, okay? You can also buy this book on Amazon. If you get the PDF, make sure you print it, okay? Print it and bind it. All right, print it and bind it. So we're going to begin on page 14. In one moment, please. Page 14. So y'all see I'm at a different coffee shop right now. This is a neighborhood coffee shop. This is a locally owned coffee shop. Not a traditional Vietnamese coffee shop, but it's locally owned. Not a commercial or corporate rather coffee shop here. So I need to, the way they make, this is black coffee, no sugar, no sweetener. I don't know if the seed, I hope the seed is not a hybrid. But this is black coffee, no sugar, no sweetener. It has a pretty smooth taste. I can tell it's a Vietnamese coffee seed. I can tell this coffee comes from Vietnam. It's smooth. It doesn't have a bitter aftertaste. Yeah, it has a smooth. Some coffee, when you drink them black, they have a pungent, I don't know how else to describe it, but like a pungent taste and then a very bitter aftertaste. This one doesn't have a pungent taste and there's no bitter aftertaste. So it's smooth throughout. So it's a pretty good coffee. I only paid 15 Vietnam dong. That's probably that might be 80 cents, 75 cents, something like that. Talking about USD, 0.75 cents US dollars. Okay. Well, y'all know what I mean. It's not a dollar, but it's the symbol on the exchange is USD, which means US dollar or United States dollar. So this is actually a good price to be able to sit inside of a coffee shop and enjoy the benefits of the ambiance. It's a very good price. Okay, so we're on page 14. We are on the second paragraph. So let's get into this, y'all. Now remember, we're on the man with the water jar, and we are still in the subheading called the historical JC, the Christ figure, or the historical Jesus, all right? So let's continue. by the way, I highly recommend that once you read, comprehend the historical Jesus, compare, contrast, and analyze that information with the subheading on page 9 called Gospel Discrepancies. Gospel Discrepancies. So compare and contrast that with that, all right? And then, of course, you want to compare, contrast, and analyze both of those subheadings with the content made by Robert Taylor in The Devil's Pulpit, where he tells us that the original gospel was written by the Coptic Egyptians, and that the original gospels tells the story of the sun's annual journey through each of the 12 constellations that are commonly known as the Zodiac or Zodiac signs. All right, the Mazzaroth, the Zoad. And that they are allegorical. That the gospel, the original gospel, hides or hid that knowledge of the cosmos in allegorical stories so that the Romans wouldn't get access to it and destroy it and it be lost forever. That's the purpose of the original Gospels. So compare and contrast that with the historical Jesus, which is the remix of the original Gospels into a biographical presentation of a man or deity man called Jesus the Christ figure. Okay? And that remix was done when the translations began in Latin, but it was heavily edited. The gospel was heavily edited when it was translated into Greek by the Goths or the Visigoths or both. All right, I got that from the Devil's Pulpit, so y'all go check that. So do your analysis of each of these stories, all right? Because each contain a paradigm, all right? And it is the historical JC paradigm that we are now living in, which has you oppressed, denationalized, and in a civilly dead or civiliter mortuus state, okay, which explains your present condition. That's the import of what we're doing right now. That's the whole point, all right? If you don't understand anything else in this section, in this part rather, of the book, Who is the Man with the Water Jar, at least try to understand that, if nothing else, okay? Because then you'll have a clear idea of the gospel, what they originally are, why it has been historicized, and its effect on you, okay? And having that knowledge, you can understand, you have a foundation to begin to understand everything else. All right, so at least try to make sure you understand those two paradigms. And the motive for creating this historical JC, the Christ figure. What's the motive? Well, world domination. How did they do it? Through the historical Jesus paradigm. Unum sanctum, doctrine of discovery, manifest destiny. Y'all see how that works? Eliminate science and engineering from the consciousness of the masses. Keep them stupid so they believe anything. Make them dependent on the church. So that the church stands between them and this imaginary God. But in fact, the church leaders are the masses' gods, okay? So that's the point. Let's get to it on page 14. Barnett goes on to claim that the detail of time, place, and people argue factual authenticity. Well, I disagree with that, because you can write a story. You go to the cinema, you watch a movie. You can watch an episode of Star Trek, and you'll see details of time, place, and people. That does not argue authenticity. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. Let's continue. This can hardly be sustained, so I guess the author agrees. Details are the stock and trade of all authors. We do not claim that Homer's descriptive powers show that he was present at the events he writes about, nor the legend of Robin Hood must be true because Sherwood Forest is mentioned. I agree with Barnett that an air of verisimilitude pervades this gospel, but this has more to do with Mark's skill as a writer than with historical veracity. And as we shall see, some of the details in the text have a surprising provenance. Okay, so I don't know if y'all can hear the noise in the background. There's construction going on. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of building and improvements taking place all over Vietnam. It is a growing, an economically growing and vital country. This is sugarcane juice. It has lime, and honey. This is quite delicious. Wow. Quite delicious. I can taste the lime and honey in that. So, in history, y'all will have heard about sugar plantations. So sugar comes from a stalk. It's actually vegetation. And here they run it through a machine to crush it. And when the machine crushes it, out comes pure sugarcane juice. It's very sweet. Very, very sweet. Very nutritious. It strengthens your bones and your teeth. So this, what you're looking at right here, the juice of a sugar cane, the sugar cane stalk, a vegetable. I wish I could show y'all one. That's what they used to make rum. This is what they were killing people over. Sugarcane plantations. Sugar manufacturing plants. This right here. Take a look at that. This is what they killed our ancestors over. Our ancestors were forced, under the threat of death and mutilation, terrorized, to grow, cultivate, harvest, and process sugarcane to produce this juice right here, which they would use to make brown sugar probably processed sugar, rum, and other things. You're looking at it right here. It's hard to believe that anyone could be so cruel as to force somebody through death and terrorism to destroy their lives and their heirs' lives from birth to death for this, for sugar, for sugarcane juice. But that is what it is, y'all. That should tell you about the mindset of the people of these colonists and their Moorish minions. Their Moorish minions. All right? Let me show it again. This right here. Does it taste delicious? Absolutely. I don't really like the taste of it if it's not cold. In India, they serve it. Sometimes they put a little ice or even no ice. But it's very nutritious. But this is how it's served in Vietnam. And it's excellent. If you have sugarcane in Vietnam, you can't, it's almost impossible to eat or drink sugarcane in India. You know, just even the machines they have, that the machines look like they're 150 years old. And they're not hygienic at all. But anyway, I just wanted to show y'all that so you can get a little bit of the history. I have never seen sugarcane juice until I came to Vietnam. All right. But that's what all that killing was about. All that forced labor, killing, the slavery laws, Jim Crow, all of it for this. And cotton and tobacco. So they don't have the same mindset as us. But let's continue. But keep in mind, the original invaders were Moors. Or at least we can say they had skin like mine and yours. Okay, so let's continue. Barrett's arguments really assume a kind of nativity on the part of Mark, suggesting that the unsophisticated nature of the document he produced must point to historical reminiscence rather than literary skill. But the unsophisticated text is really an illusion. Mark's gospel is in fact considered more literary than we might initially suspect. Just as with Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, we must not let the narrative style mask the artifacts of the content. Consider, for example, the accounting of the stilling of the storm. Mark 4:35 through 41. Barrett's claim that this contains eyewitness testimony can hardly be sustained when we realize that Mark's account is a reworking of a few verses from Psalms. The reader is invited to compare Psalms 107, verse 23 through 30, with Mark chapter 4, verse 35 through 41. Y'all got that? Y'all got that? So they lifted the account of the storm out of Psalms 107. Well, let's continue. But by the way, before we go on, in the Bible, there are many, I don't know how to say it, there are many, let me just say levels to it for lack of anything better coming to my mind. So there's the astrological or the astrotheological level. There's the anatomical level, right? There's the linguistic level where you can work with etymology. and grammar rules. There's many multiple levels that you can examine the scriptures from, and they all tell a story. It is an encoded story. There are codes. It's an encoded story. There are codes. If you know where to look, you can look in certain verses, and you'll see the same words, or you'll see information communicated in code. So the Jewish rabbis are very familiar with the coded, or with the codes in the Old Testament. But there's many levels of knowledge of this. But that's really all. There are more, but that's all that comes to my mind right now. So let's continue. And this is a fly in here that's bugging me. It might be argued, and sometimes is, although not by Barnett, that what happened to the apostles on the Sea of Galilee was, in fact, a quote-unquote fulfillment of this passage in Psalms. Y'all see that? So what did they do here? Well, it looks like the gospel writers, they just took some stuff out of the Hebrew scriptures, and then they wrote it into the New Testament. Why would they do that? Why would they do it? So that it would be familiar to you. That's for one. And then for two, they can say, look, the New Testament is fulfilling prophecies. Y'all see that? Give you a reason to believe. Why? Because you trust them. You drank the Kool-Aid by accepting them as authorities, that they know better than you, and leaders. That's how they did it. That was the whole point of it. Okay, they manipulated you. Using stories and writing, casting spells. That's what it is, casting spells. All right, took you from your frame of mind before, let's say before you met them or were introduced to them through their literature, sermons, songs, music, whatever. And then once you became introduced to their content, they changed your mind, created a new reality for you, a new belief system. Therefore, they put you under a spell. Y'all see it? That's all it means. All right, so what happened to the apostles at the Sea of Galilee is argued by many people to be fulfillment of Psalms 107, 23 through 30. It is generally fruitless to argue against such a point of view, but we might remind the person who upholds it of the philosophical principle called Occam's razor. That's O-C-C-A-M. Occam's, O-C-C-A-M, apostrophe S, razor, R-A-Z-O-R, so y'all might want to research that, which enjoins us to explore the natural explanation of a phenomena before we have recourse to a supernatural one. Well, that's common sense, right? So Occam's razor says, find out the characteristics of the natural phenomena. In other words, describe it. Once you describe it, study and understand the principles, the natural law principles, the forces that govern that natural phenomena before you say there's some supernatural cause for it, or capital G-O-D did it. It is far more likely that Mark wove his story out of Psalms 107, then that capital God prompted the psalmist to write down a prophecy of an event that was to occur some 10 centuries later. 10 centuries, that's 1,000 years. So the logic is what? Probability. What's more probable? What's more probable? It is far more likely, or it is far more probable, that Mark wove his story out of Psalms 107. It is far more probable that Mark just plagiarized, just copied his stuff from Psalms 107, than that a deity prompted, or that the deity gave the psalmist a prophecy about what was going to happen on the Sea of Galilee 1,000 years later. Now, common sense should tell you what's more probable, right? Common sense. But if you are religified out, if you're disconnected from nature, your mind is off in the abstract world of devils and demons, and God did it and God can make anything happen. If that's your mindset, most likely you're going to say, well, it's more likely that God gave this psalmist a prophecy, because you're disconnected from nature. And y'all know that if you're disconnected from nature, do you realize you are, technically speaking, out of your mind? Right? Why? Because reality are those things that we experience only with our senses. That's reality. You can take that and do what you want with it, but that's the fact. Exactly the same might be said of Mark's description of John the Baptist at Mark 1:6, which owes more to the scriptural portrayal of Elijah, which is 2 Kings 1:8, than to a supposed eyewitness testimony. Y'all got that? Which owes more to the scriptural portrayal of Elijah than to a supposed eyewitness testimony. However, the most striking example of this tendency to couch, keyword tendency, in other words, they do this all the time. They do what? However, the most striking example of this tendency to couch his story in Old Testament language and images can be found in Mark's account of the crucifixion. So here you see scholars, they agree that the New Testament writers, the gospel editors, frequently and consistently plagiarize stories out of the Old Testament and put it into the Gospels. Stories and images, as the author says. Okay? And the author focuses on the crucifixion. So let's check this out. From 14, verse 32, to the end of chapter 15, that's in the book of Mark, there are numerous echoes of the Psalms, particularly Psalms 22, 31, and 41. Now, I wonder if these Psalms are the Psalms that are supposed to come up out of Kemet, Egypt. Why? Why? Because then we're dealing with what? A solar deity, Amun-Ra, a solar deity, a sun deity, just like JC, the Christ figure, both sun deities, using the same template that I talked about in the last video, the sun's annual course through the sky or through the zodiacs. That's the basic temple, a template rather. From that template, you get the Amun-Ra story. You get the Mithra story. You get JC the Christ story. You get all of the major deities' stories from that astrological template, okay? Okay, so do these psalms explain, or do these psalms contain prophecies of JC's death? Or did Mark write about JC's death using expressions found in Psalms? Well, there you go. That should be obvious. In other words, is it a prophecy? Like we've been taught to believe, scholars? Are they prophecies? The foretelling of future events? Or did the gospel editors write the story of JC's crucifixion using language that he got out of the Psalms? I'll let y'all decide. I need to eat something. Islam to the Moors and Shalawama. If you want to support my project to write the book of the law in Ancient Ibaryath and modern English, to put the astronomy, astrology, cosmology, the Zodiac, and the natural law principles and concepts, including the 7 Hermetic laws and constitutional, the laws as they are expressed, presented in the Constitution, and other documents of that sort. Support the project, y'all. Okay, this is one of the most important things, in my opinion, not just because I'm doing it, but this is one of the most important projects that we could do in our lifetimes. And that's my opinion. Why? Because unless you understand that what we call the Bible, or what's been called the Bible, unless you understand that this is not religion, it is law. And you are law. Adam's Eve says, thank you. It's my pleasure, my pleasure. And we are the law. In fact, we speak law. So it's but we don't understand that. So what does that mean? That means we are, as a people, out of our mind. That's why we get bullied by the colonists, etc. But anyway, if y'all want to support, please support. I'll be back online maybe in 1 hour. I just need to eat. And then we'll continue this, okay? But I have books, links to the Ancient Ibaryath books that I have written. And also my Zoom class, which is a live class, and my streaming class, which is, well, it's an online streaming class. All right. So y'all support me if you've been learning with me. All right. I'll see y'all back in about 1 hour. Adams, Eve, I hope you could make it back. Give me 1 hour. Shalom, Islam.